Hello, Michael.
Hello, sir. How do you do?
All right, how are you?
Well, not too bad. I'm not sure if Patrick is joining us. I think he said he wanted to join us. Um, I don't know if he's awake over there in Oregon.
Yeah, well, you know, I I used to live on the West Coast for a little bit, so I get it. I mean, I know.
I mean, he's probably up.
Yeah,
I don't know what when I set the meeting with you. I mean, normally he doesn't jump on these things with me, so I figure he wasn't going to be attending and it would just be me. But last time I spoke to him, he said that he wanted to get on this call today. So,
that's just my phone. So,
just gonna send him a quick little message to see if he's gonna come on here or if we can start without him. I just sent you an email with another manual.
yeah, I did get that.
Okay, good. So basically, one of the reasons why I sent you this manual, turn on this video as well. One of the reasons why I sent you this video, this manual, is because in it makes mention to the caliber sizes of each individual recipe, which is important with certain ones that you want to play with. I don't know
Okay.
if you're going to be making various sizes of product or not, or if you're going to do whole muscle or just force meat salami.
Yeah. Okay.
But you'll have recipes and kind of diameters relating to all of those as well.
Okay.
Okay, and so it'll just give it's just a nice way to have a good idea of what is kind of all involved with certain aspects of the recipe itself, as it relates to usually fermentation and drying stages and times.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. So are you able to, what the heck I just did? Let me just put this down. There we go. All right. You are in front of the machine. That is good news. Okay. So this is going to be the main screen that you're working with. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
You're gonna be spending the majority of your time here, and we can work from this screen and go backwards to any other screen that we need to see, and we can describe all of those other things as we move along. And I say this only because that you've had a little bit of time to kind of navigate in and out, so you kind of got to see a bunch of things already, but this is a good screen to really start from and all that good stuff. So this is our recipe screen, as I refer to it anyways.
Yeah.
And you do have it set to English, and we've got a lot of different icons and a lot of different information that's kind of being broadcast to you as we as you look at it, right?
Yes.
So I want to start with a couple of important features that you need to know of when you're reading your temperature and your humidity and your set points, and why things will flash and when things won't flash.
Okay.
So What temperature and humidity are probably the two most important things to look at on this screen. And what you need to know is they both have a delta or a range kind of built into each one of them. So on the temperature side, we have a ±2 temperature or degree points. And on the humidity, we have a 7% plus minus.
Okay.
Okay. So on the temperature side, like you see, you've got you've got the set point at basically the same as your temperature. So if you were to get up to let's say on this one here, you'd be at 22.6 is when your cold icon should activate. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And on the humidity side, right now it is trying to dehumidify because you're exactly 1 degree point or 1 percentage point out of range. Okay.
Yep.
Now, when the cabinet is empty, it's going to be far more touchy in the sense that you're going to have a larger swing above and below those set points. It's like a giant tennis match kind of going back and forth.
Yeah.
But that is okay because at least you get to see how it's working and all that good stuff. And as you know, by pressing the values, the yellow values, you can modify some of this information. That is also true for your pH set points, and it's also true for your total time as well. This is something that can be modified. So let's say, for example, you're using whatever recipe number 4, and your first time out, you found that maybe you didn't have enough drying time in that 3rd drying stage and you need more. You can obviously up that total time for that particular stage. Okay. And so I suggest that you use these recipes if you don't have a strong background in salami making. If you do, we can kind of move towards creating your own recipe, something that's going to work well for you. But as you're building your recipes, I want you to keep those swings or those variations in mind when you're looking at your set points.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just so you know, my background is very, I eat a lot of salami.
You just don't make a lot of salami.
I enjoy a lot of it, but this is the only book that I've read, right? So
okay, perfect.
On the subject. So that's where I'm at. I'm reading it now. It's time to put it in place.
Okay, so what you're going to find maybe a little bit differently from in the book itself might be your drying time, your drying schedule, just because what these guys tend to do slightly different is in the first stages of drying, they will not follow both the drop in the temperature and the drop in the humidity in your traditional way. So normally, you'll start high and then gradually work your way down to where you're going to sit.
Yeah.
So what'll happen in their recipe is as your temperature is coming down day by day, after fermentation, you're going to drop down substantially and then slowly come back up.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember that on like this page here. They had I don't know if you could see that.
I could see it. Yeah. So you can
Okay.
see how they're starting high
Yeah.
and they're gradually kind of working their way down.
Yeah.
Okay. So what these guys will do is on the third line where you see 93, they're
Yeah.
going to drop down to maybe like 65. And they'll start to work the percentage of moisture up
Okay.
back towards, I think they usually end up somewhere around 72% or something along those lines.
Okay.
So you're going to have to look at that day by day and see how that works for you, or we can program in a recipe so that you can kind of follow along with what you're learning through your book. Or what you can do is you can play with those values day by day. You can manually change the recipe, but on a temporary basis. Okay. So the next time you were to go in and use that recipe, it would revert back to its defaults.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just this is it's very important for you to know, so that, you know, if you're using it one day and let's say you go to teach a class, you're taking a meeting, maybe you have the power flickers on and off, you come back and you see the values have changed. That's because they're always trying to revert back to their defaults. Okay. Another example is, let's say you stopped your recipe, you finished your recipe, you left the machine kind of on. If you were to lose power, okay,
Yeah.
when the power comes back on, it's going to go right back to the last place you were.
Okay.
Even if you had, exited, you press that start button, you hit the home button, and you were at the, home technician, manufacturer screen, whatever, it would always revert back to your recipe screen in the event of a power failure and a restart. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
And they do this, because you're dealing with some sort of food product, and they just assume that, if you lose power and the power comes back, then you were in the middle of a recipe, and we want to try and cool or heat or whatever it is to try and maintain the atmosphere of your, that your product is currently sitting in. Okay.
Yep.
So it will always come back to where this this screen is. Okay. So now that we looked at, our temperature and our humidity ranges, I want to start with looking at these icons and what they all do or what they mean, and how they work, how they function. Because some of these you can manually disable and some of these you can manually force. Okay.
Okay.
So, for example, with the air renew, this is a cycling of the air. So on top of your cabinet, you've got like a master slave unit. You're going to have a fan motor unit that's going to be, it'll be right there. Okay, so that little stainless steel, exactly. Okay, so that's your motor unit. And then you've got that little vent that has that little piece of plastic, silicone, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's your master slave unit. So what happens is that system, and subsequently when you go to program a new recipe in there, one of the variables will be an air renew or air change. Okay.
Okay.
And so currently built into all of the recipes, you're going to have that icon. It's probably something that you may not ever see flashing, because it'll last maybe about 10 minutes and it'll happen every 12 hours. Okay. And so for making salami, it is very, very important, as opposed to some of the other food products that, can be programmed to be made inside the machine. when we're fermenting specifically and we are having all those gases kind of coming off of our product, we need to change the air in the system. And that's essentially what it does. The motor is going to activate, it's going to start to pull in fresh air, and then that slave unit is going to open up and air, all those gases, the off-gassing from the salami is going to start to get pushed out of the unit, and we don't have to worry about, an additional issue with, maybe some bad mold starting to, creep into your product or whatnot. But I mean, because we're in North America, you're probably going to be inoculating your product in some way to use a starter culture, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, and I was going to ask you if you have any contacts at CR Hansen anyway,
Yes.
or yeah, okay. Yeah, I can imagine us being a food science and food safety department that we're going to be using inoculating with cultures in the beginning anyway. So
Definitely. And so there's a few different people that we can put you in contact with, and you can discuss those, the different starter cultures and whatnot that are going to be available to you. I mean, I am not a super huge proponent of it, but I'm also not the USDA. So, you got to do what's with what is legal for you. Right?
Yep.
And so that's going to definitely affect your process and how it all works, and maybe one of the reasons why you're gonna end up dialing your temperatures and your humidity as you need. I mean, we've got guys that added additional heating elements to the machine to go to higher temps to make a larger kill step and so on and so forth. I think it's a little extreme, but you got to do with whatever the government in your state is telling you to do.
Yeah.
So the air renew is essentially just something to help change the air, get some of those off-gassing air out of there. I mean, there are cabinets that don't have this functionality, and the only way to do this is to physically open the door. And it's a great way to also change the air in the cabinet. But if you're in an area where you've got insects and all that kind of stuff, it becomes an issue for your HACCP program and whatnot. So the air exchange is something, when I was working on the factory level, I just implemented as a standard piece of kit and not an optional piece of equipment, basically.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I like it.
So this particular step or functionality is one of the functions that can actually be forced. So if you were to press that icon, there's going to be exactly the little time box that comes up and says, okay, well, how long do you want this to work for? Right. And so by checking that box, you're going to force that function now to work. Okay.
Okay.
So now with the next icon, this is going to be your heating icon, and it's pretty simple. You've got a couple of heating elements that are attached to the internal fan of your unit. Okay. And so basically by pressing that button, it's going to ask you, do you want to disable the heat? Right. And so if you go ahead and confirm this, now you see how your icon has changed colors.
Yeah.
So this will now only work to cool your unit. When it comes to dehumidification, we're going to have a little bit of a problem, but just because of the way that the system is set to work to dehumidify. Okay. Now I'm going to go and get you, I'm going to go ahead and get you to reactivate it because we definitely want this to work.
Yep.
And then beside that, you're going to have your defrost functionality. Now the system defrost is going to work automatically. This is another one that you can force, okay? So you can manually set this one to work. Now you can go ahead and confirm it, but it won't do anything for you. And the reason why is because you're at plus temperatures, okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Now our cooling system, and this is the reason why I wanted to talk to you the other day on the phone and set that temperature low, is normally when the unit is cooling, trying to cool, you're going to notice that the evaporator temperature, or the VTE, is going to be lower than what your cabinet currently states as your average temperature or your internal temperature of the cabinet. And usually there's about an 8 to 10 degree point of a difference. And it can swing even lower than that if it's really, trying to cool and trying to cool hard. You might even see an 18-point difference, a 16-point difference, right?
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, a good idea of when you're actually achieving negative temperatures. Okay, if you were, let's say you were going to make a capicolo, or maybe a pancetta or something of that nature. Okay, the only time you're really going to be sitting at really low temperatures where your evaporator is at minus temperatures is probably going to be during the salting stage.
Okay.
Okay, so at the salting stage, most of those recipes, you're going to be sitting down at around 2 degrees Celsius. Okay.
Okay.
So working at 2 degrees Celsius, that means your cabinet is going to probably max out at around minus 8 degrees Celsius. So what happens is your defrost is going to be set to work on a timer. So every 2 hours, your controller is going to look at the VTE on its own, and it's going to say, okay, are we under plus 10 degrees Celsius? So if not, then we're just going to keep on going, and we're not even going to bother activating a defrost, because there should be no ice accumulating at the evaporator.
Right.
Okay? But in that particular case, yeah, we're definitely working in minus temperatures. We're definitely working at cold temperatures where, we're working with, 75, 80, 90% humidity. So there's plenty of moisture in the cabinet with all that, ice, super cold temperatures at the evaporators. We're definitely going to be making ice. So once that icon starts flashing, we're going to take any kind of hot gas that is accumulated in your system while we were trying to cool initially, and we're going to loop that back into our evaporator, and we're going to try and get rid of any ice. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, this particular cabinet is slightly different from the matcha meat, which is made for dry aging. So hopefully you're not going to be doing any dry aging in this cabinet.
No.
And the only reason why I say that is because one of the main differences relates to the actual defrost cycle between the two cabinets. One of the physically main differences of the two is that during that defrost cycle, there is a pan that is underneath your evaporator. Any kind of moisture that has accumulated, ice, whatnot, that's starting to get melted away, will drop into that pan and then roll towards the actual drain. So when we look at your cabinet, we're not going to be spending a lot of time at super, negative temperatures. So we're not going to be building a lot of ice. And therefore, any kind of moisture sitting in the pan going towards the drain should not freeze and create a blockage of any kind. So we should be okay. So we do have clients that sometimes they'll, buy Stagionello and say, you know what, salami is not really working for me. Let me try, my hand at dry aging. And then, we get a phone call saying, hey, what's going on? Blah, 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 blah. Anyways, so going back to the defrost, that's going to work on a temperature basis. Okay. And we're going to constantly be reading that VTE to see when it is that we actually achieve our plus 10 degrees Celsius set point on the defrost cycle. So if that happens in 10 minutes, okay, our defrost is done in 10 minutes, and then it'll go right back to wherever you are on your recipe. Or it might take 20 minutes or 25 minutes, but it'll also have a secondary timer that runs in the background to say, okay, we're going to max out at, well, let's say 30 minutes. Just in the event that maybe the probe goes down, or some other situation arises where we may not be hitting our set point. Maybe we're coming close to it, but we need to go back into cooling because there is product inside the machine and it is currently working. So we need to, kind of get back into what we're doing. We can't just be sitting at these higher temperatures.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that kind of fail-safe built into it. Now we have our dehumidification icon, and this one, as needed, will change, right? It'll become humidity, 3 little water droplets if you need to add moisture. So if you were to go in and press the 75 set point and you change that to 90, for example, you're going to see that value change now, or you're going to see the icon change. So that kind of works back and forth between humidification, dehumidification, based on what you want to try and do. Okay.
Yeah.
Now your fan icon, this will switch between a high and low fan. So right now the blue fan is your high speed fan. So that means you have full voltage going, and that'll be 208 or 220 volts going directly to your fan. And so that will give you I believe it's 2 meters per second, if I'm not mistaken. That will be the airflow on this one. And so when you look at the recipes on Stagionello, there's going to be the majority of them using a green fan or a low speed fan. And so you can right now, if you were to press that, you can toggle between a high and low fan. Okay.
Okay.
And so you may have your whole entire recipe using a high speed fan or a low speed fan, or you may have like on some of the whole muscle recipes, you're going to have a high speed fan for a portion of your recipe. So this is something that you can decide to kind of play with as you build your own recipe, whether you need a high speed, low speed, whether you want it on partially high, partially low for certain aspects of the recipe. That's something that you can decide. But what you are going to find is that it is an essential component when building your recipe. Okay.
Okay.
Patrick had a client once upon a time, or has a client that once upon a time, he couldn't understand why he was having case hardening. And essentially what ended up happening was he got into some of the system variables and he ended up modifying it where he had the fan running at all times. Now that works well for dry aging meat, and that does not work well for making salami.
Yeah.
Essentially, what we want to do with our fan is we would like it off as much as possible. Okay.
Okay.
Because essentially what we're trying to mimic is we're trying to mimic what the environment was like inside a cave at some point, because that's where Italians would have started making their salami, right? Once upon a time, they'd go into some, you know, damp-ish, kind of cool area to, you know, finish their product, you know? And so the more static we can establish of an environment, the better it is for the permeability of the casing, right? We want moisture to kind of migrate back towards the casing if we have too much airspeed, or if we, you know, if it gets too dry. And that we'll discuss another part of that as we move closer to the end of our icons. Okay, and we're gonna get there pretty quick real soon. So the cold icon is going to be one which we can disable again. So if you were to press it, you're going to notice that it's going to change colors once you confirm it. You don't have to confirm it, but you know, you can deactivate the functionality. Okay.
Okay.
And then aroma, as we discussed the other day, this is something that we can use to add flavor, a flavoring. Now, you know, when we did it the other day, we were doing it for testing purposes, but we can essentially add aroma in the form of some sort of concentrated liquid solution. So if we were to use, I don't know, like essence of rosemary oil and drop that in your tank of aroma mixed in with water, and you can program into, let's say, you know, your fermentation stage, or maybe day 1, day 2 of drying, when your product is very, very permeable, you can essentially add that, you know, essence of rosemary into your salami. Or if you were making cheese, or if you were making pasta, and you're drying that pasta inside your Stagionello, you can essentially start to play with adding additional outside flavors. Most people, this is something that they don't play with. We might get some real, you know, out of the box, super creative chefs that are going to, you know, use this functionality to kind of add some sort of aroma to whatever food product that they're trying to play with. But essentially, it's not something that everybody kind of plays with ultimately. Especially, I mean, the closest thing that one might want to integrate as part of aroma or flavoring would be liquid smoke.
Yeah.
Okay. But a lot of people, especially in America, they don't really tend to do a lot of liquid smoking. They like their traditional, you know, smoke oven and that sort of thing. So it's something that you can kind of integrate as you see fit, you know, because there are certain salamis that traditionally require smoking before they go into a fermentation or a drying stage, you know, dry cure or whatever. So I don't really see you using that too much unless, you know, cold smoking is something that you want to do.
Okay.
And last but not least, one very, very important icon, which goes back to what we were just talking about, is the recovery or a pause. Okay. So what happens is this will occur in every single stage of your recipe for 30 minutes every 2 hours. Once you see that icon flashing, basically everything else stops. We ignore our temperature probe, we ignore our humidity sensor. Everything is just going to shut down. Nothing will happen. It will be a completely static environment for 30 minutes. So you will definitely see your humidity go out of range. You're definitely going to see your temperature go out of range, because basically we're going to ignore everything so that we can allow for your casing to try to remain permeable. Okay, it's just a rest period. And, you know, after being bombarded by cold and hot and air and all that kind of stuff, we just want to kind of let everything go. So sometimes, you know, like, and I'm saying this because, you know, when you call me and say, hey, I've got this issue, or something's not happening, or this value is out of whack, my first question is going to be, what is flashing on your screen? Because I need to know if it's something that is part of the program, or is it something that is just not going right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
So for example, if I'm trying to, if let's say your system's trying to dehumidify, and maybe somebody came along and pressed that hot icon and disabled it, and during this defrost, only the, you know, the cold is flashing, and the hot is not flashing as well, you know, maybe I've got an issue there. Maybe that's what's happening. Somebody has, you know, somebody has deactivated, or maybe, you know, it's trying to do an air renew, or maybe we're in recovery and, you know, we're not allowed to do anything else. Because you'll notice that once that icon is flashing, if you were to try and, you know, force an aroma or force some other action to happen, it might come up with an error on screen saying not allowed now. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, now moving to just underneath your pH, you're going to have your start icon, your home icon, your lights, and your cleaning in place icon. So we know from our little test the other day that if we were to press the home button, you know, the only thing that's going to happen is we're going to get our VTC and VTE settings. And the only way to exit our recipe is by pressing the stop button first and then hitting our home button. Okay. Now, each time I do this, it is going to take us back to what I call the home screen, which is our customer technician producer. And so if you've ever tried to press the technician or the producer icons, those will be, you know, ask you for a password. And there's a really specific reason. Before you do that, I'm going to go ahead and press the technician icon again. And I want you to enter in the number 1 4 times. Press OK. Press technician again. And so it's going to take you to a couple of different areas. Here you're going to see the default recipes, variables, and alarms. Okay. So under default recipes, you're going to have all of your recipes, but here you're going to notice something a little bit different from the customer area, which is the little eyeglasses icon. So if you were to press that, this enables you to look at the recipe and the values of all the default recipes, right? So if you were to go in, you press ahead, exactly. So you're going to see stage 1, the time that you have, the temperature that's set, the humidity, what is my airspeed? So on the ventilation, 0 equals low speed, 1 would equal high speed. So if you were to press the down icon, okay, keep going down, keep going down some more. Well, if you press the little white box over here on the, there you go. Okay, so now I want you to go down with the recipe again, down, keep going down, 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 down. You're going to see a bunch of different values over here, and you're going to notice that there's either values set in there or values not set in there. Okay, and so basically these will, they're just all different variables that are pre-programmed in for each stage of the game. So on the other side of the screen, if you want to go down there, just hit the house icon and that'll take you back. Okay, so press technician again. I want you to go into variables. Now, this is a very massively long list of system variables that we don't want anybody to touch. That's why we locked it off. But because you have a technician on staff, I'm showing you how to enter into this, because one day I might need him or her to say, okay, let's go in and look at the system variables and see what we have to play with. But normally, this is an area as a user you do not need to touch. And the reason why is because this particular controller is adaptable to many different situations where maybe we're using it for your application in a small confined area, or maybe we're doing it to control a massive room that, you know, has a specific type of product. It has a specific type of cooling unit, and that cooling unit functions in a very specific way. And we need to modify our controller to adapt to that room, that system, that product. So essentially, there are many different system functions that you do not need to play with, modify, or anything of that nature. Okay. So we can go back to the house. I want you to go back into technician just one more time. And this, the alarms is one area that you wouldn't normally necessarily have access to unless you go into this area. And so it's going to relate to, you know, the book, these E codes. A lot of them are going to refer to the fact that the unit was unplugged and plugged back in. Okay. Some of them will be relating to a door alarm. Okay, maybe you left the door open, and the door alarm comes up, boom, register a different code. So every once in a while, you can come in, you can actually delete all of those. If you were to press the delete, the trash can icon right there beside the house, say cancel log, you press that, it will cancel the entire log, not just one line of data. And so right now, essentially, you don't need anything on here. I mean, what happened with the with your technician?
So he came and looked at everything, and he needs to get some of the gas, but it's a gas that is not normally available in this area, and so his supplier is going to find it, and he'll get back to us when he's got more gas, the gas that goes inside of it.
Fair enough. Okay.
What is it, like 456 or something like that, or?
I think they changed it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially here, you can go ahead and cancel that log, because basically the E23 is going to relate to the power.
Okay.
And the E18 is going to be the high temperature alarm.
Yeah, which is what we get if we leave it set. Okay.
Exactly. So you can go ahead and cancel that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go back to customer. Okay, so here we have several options. You'll have an events log, you'll have your connection, which are two new icons that they created for this last generation of firmware. And then you have your 4 standard ones. So the connection and the events are something that you're going to use very, very little of. So we're not really going to focus on those, but we are going to look at the system variables, the pH calibration of the probe, climatic recipes, and the HACCP performance. Okay.
Okay.
So if you were to go into the system variables, you're going to notice that this is a much shorter list than what you were just playing with. And so these are functions that we say to people that the average user is going to interact with more so than everything else on the list that a technician would have to look at. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one is relating to recording of your data. Okay. So every 240 minutes, your system is going to take a snapshot of itself, and you are going to record the date and the time. You're going to record the temperature, the humidity, and the pH values. Okay. And that's
Okay.
going to be stored onto your computer, onto your controller, I should say.
Okay.
Below that, you have the ability to change from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay.
Okay.
Obviously, as you can see, the system set as default is set up to work with Celsius. So if you want to go ahead and change that to Fahrenheit, you can do that right now.
I'm good with Celsius.
Perfect. Now, this GPRS APN, this is relates to data that you can basically set up for remote monitoring of your system. Now,
Okay.
unfortunately, the way the Italians have set this thing up is they've set it up to be used with a SIM card that you would use inside your phone, right?
Right. Right.
Instead of setting it up via Wi-Fi. And so a lot of our customers say, well, why the hell did they do that? I've got Wi-Fi set up. I don't want to, buy a separate, data only SIM card and pay a monthly fee to have remote monitoring and blah, 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 blah. They, well, I don't know what to say. I mean, unfortunately, that's the way the company kind of set it up. Whether you need remote monitoring on the system or not, I mean, that is entirely up to you. I don't think you're going to have issues with the USDA coming in and
No.
checking up on you.
No.
So it's probably something that you're not going to really need to activate, in all honesty. Below that, you're going to see this value, this EPSU, and that is to basically set up a screen lock so that if you have a lot of people coming through your department, your classroom, wherever this unit is kept, you can set it up where, your passcode 1234, which is the value just below it, would be what you would need to use to unlock the screen. And so basically a timer is set up where, 5 minutes after the last button you pressed or the last time you touched your screen, that 5-minute timer will start to elapse. And then the next time you go and touch the screen, little keypad comes up, you enter your 1234, okay, and then that unlocks the screen.
Now, or when that gets locked, is everything still visible? You just can't access. Okay.
Yeah, everything is still visible. It's just as soon as you touch something, that keypad will come up on the screen, and away you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, something else that they added that's fairly new is going to be the next two values, the LSPH and LIPH, and you have your pH limits that they set in. So there's actually an alarm that can be enabled. Right now it should be disabled. So that is your AAPH, which will relate to it being enabled or disabled. And what happens is once your pH starts to go out of range, high being the 7.0 and the low being the 4.0, that will trigger an alarm, basically.
Okay. Yep.
So again, it's something that you can use. You don't have to use. Some people find it a bit tedious if it doesn't really apply to them. Okay? If they don't really care. Let's say, for example, they're dry aging. They say, you know what, I'm not really monitoring the pH. Let's say the probe hasn't been calibrated in a while. And it's reading low or it's reading high. It might set off a false alarm, and people just find it to be annoying, so they go ahead and disable
Okay.
it. Okay. And I don't believe there's anything below that, but you can go ahead and press the down icon.
So does the zero means disabled?
The 0 means disabled, yes.
Yep. Okay. That's it.
Okay, good. So that's it. So now, if you were to ever want, if you ever wanted to modify these values, that little box with the little pencil icon will allow you to go and modify any of these values, okay?
Okay.
So you can go ahead and exit by pressing the house icon, exactly. Okay. So let's go back into customer. Okay, so pH calibration, if you want to press that. Okay, so automatically you can see that live value for the pH 4, okay, is already reading. It's wherever your probe is, it's probably sitting in this little canister, and it's reading whatever fluid that it's currently sitting in, okay?
Okay.
Now, once that value kind of stabilizes, which it basically is fairly stabilized right now, or else you'd see massive jumps in numbers, okay? When you go to change your fluid to calibrate these probes, you'll notice that it starts to go down rapidly or starts to come up rapidly, okay?
Okay.
Once it comes down to this point where it settles, where you're just seeing the values kind of go up 1 number, 2 number, maybe 3 digits at a time, we consider this to be fairly stable.
Yeah.
If it's jumping back and forth wildly, like it's going up 10 numbers, it's coming down 5 numbers, it's shooting up 15 numbers, it's coming back down 20 numbers, then we know that there's something wrong. There's something is just not right, okay?
Okay.
But right now, we can see that the value is fairly stable. So if you were to press that pH 4 button right now, you'll see that it changes color, it locks in the value, and now we have our live look at the pH 7. So don't do anything just yet. Don't do anything just yet. So at this point, what would happen is you would take your probe out of the pH 4.0 solution, you'd put it into your, pH 7, you'd start reading that value. So once it starts to climb and it settles, then you would want to press your pH 7, lock that value in, which you can do right now. You can press the pH 7. We just don't want to confirm anything right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this point here, once you've got your both values established, boom, you hit your check mark icon, you're good, but you want to hit the X right now. Perfect. Hit customer again. We want to go into HACCP performance. And so here we're going to take a look at all the data that we've been recording every 240 minutes since you activated the unit, because usually what happens is they go and they delete all of this information beforehand, before the unit leaves the factory. Now, one thing that I need to stress is I want you to delete this log once a year, at least once a year.
Okay.
What ends up happening if you get too much information logged into your system, you could risk, you know, overloading your memory. And now that wouldn't happen for about 3 or 4 years, but some people, what they do is because they don't use this information, this log, they sometimes forget about it.
Okay.
And so they'll just let this thing run for years and years and years and years, which can create a problem with your system down the road. So what I say is, you know, just go in once a year, get rid of this information. If you want to delete that information at the end of your cycle so that you keep it in your mind as something to do when
Yeah.
you're starting a new recipe or something of that nature,
Okay.
you can go ahead and do that as well. Okay.
So how would I download this data if I needed to do that?
Okay, so downloading the data or printing the data is achievable, but printing the data requires a small handheld printer that works with this particular controller.
Okay.
That is one of the easiest ways to do this. Downloading this information, on the other hand, that requires the SIM card and registering,
Okay.
blah, 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 all that craziness. So do you really need this information downloaded? Is a visualization enough? I mean, that is up for you to decide. We do
Okay.
have handheld printers in stock, and you know, we can quote you on that. I don't know if I don't think you purchased one originally, no?
No, we did not.
Okay. Now, do you require this information as a hard copy?
No, I mean, not at this time. If we decide to do that in the class and the labs that we do, then we'll figure that out.
Perfect. So let's say, for example, you use your little white marker on the chalkboard and you say, okay, I'm going to write down the date. And unfortunately, they put a giant pig on it, but essentially, this was originally designed to use as, you know, for data, you know, for the actual user to say, okay, I started my recipe on the 5th of March, 2022. So now you don't have to sit there and remember, oh, when exactly did I start this?
Yeah.
So that
Okay.
if you came back in here, you could press your little search icon and say, okay, March 5th.
Okay.
And so on March 5th, we'll go and search that data and say, okay, where did we start? Okay, where like I'm not sure exactly where we let's see, which one is this? Is that the month?
Yeah, I'm following it's the day, month, year.
Okay.
If you follow the same.
Perfect. Okay, so now, for example, if you were to search a line of data and it does its search, but you don't immediately see it within this string of, I don't know, whatever it is, you know, 12 lines of data, you can rest assured that it is on this particular page. And what does that mean? So if we just take a look quickly at our icons, we have our up and down icons. Then we have our page ahead or page behind and our page advance icons. We've got our little search, we've got our trash can, we've got our printer, we've got our graph, and we're looking at our reading data, and we've got our house icon, and we'll look at those in just a second. So what do I mean by a page of data? A page of data actually refers to 32 lines of data. So you saw how you went from a string on the last set that was reading 11, 11, 11, 12, 12, 12, 13, 13, 13. And then when you went over here, you've got 14, 14, 15, 15, 15, 16, 16, 16. Okay.
Yeah, it's
so
the last page.
that's your last page. So
Yeah.
you might you know, like you might come on, maybe you were looking for 16, okay? And
Yep.
so you came up on here and you didn't see any 16. But the computer is telling you that somewhere on this page of 32 lines,
It's 16.
you're going to find the date or the number 16.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So now if we were to press that R icon and you were to press the graph icon, you're going to see that information in the form of a graph. Okay.
Okay.
So now with this one here, we're looking at the temperature. If you were to hit, now you'll notice that we have an eyeglass icon. So if you were to press that icon, we're going to toggle between the temperature, the humidity, and the pH. So you can look at this as a graph to see what have we done over the last X number of days or hours, however it's set up, okay?
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to data and downloadable data, I can't remember if when transferring the data onto a computer, if you've got line graph, I believe you have line and graph data, but when you're printing, it's just straight line data. So you're getting, you know, the time, the temperature, the humidity,
Yeah.
the temperature, all that line data that you would have seen on the previous screen.
Yep. Okay.
And again, when you go and delete this information, it's a one-shot deal. You're not getting rid of a line of data. You're not getting rid of a page of data. You're deleting the entire log. It's all one kind of thing. So you want to make sure of that. Okay. So
Okay.
I want you to go ahead and press the house icon now. I want you to go back into customer and go to climatic recipes. So here we're going to have a list of your created recipes, your default recipes that relate to the manual that I would have sent you earlier on today. And you're going to have your create a recipe. So when you're creating a recipe, all that data is going to be inserted just like how we saw it in that previous look under the technician. Okay.
Okay.
So when we go and create a recipe, we're going to go to that first page, which will be, okay, we want to create the name of our recipe, right?
Okay.
So we'll hit that little pencil icon and you want to erase, you want to erase all of that data and you want to put in whatever name you want to put in, you know, Brian's test salami, blah, 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 whatever it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And then you hit OK. Then you want to set as in relation to, you know, the book that you were talking about, or based on your level of skill by this point to say, okay, let's just stop and take a look here. How many days or how many stages of fermentation do I want? Do I just need one with one temperature, one humidity? Do I need two? Do I need three? Okay. How many days of drying do I need? And then how many stages of curing do I need? Okay.
Okay. Yep.
And so once you establish, that's what'll give you your total stage numbers. So it might be 8, it might be 5, it might be 12, it might be 13. So you go in and you change whatever. Okay.
Yep.
Once you've done that, you're going to hit the right facing arrow. And so you're going to start to put in all this information. You can say, okay, fermentation, blah, 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 blah. How long do I want this stage to last? 15 hours, 30 hours, 700 hours, whatever the case may be. From there, we're going to go into our temperature set points, our humidity set points, pH is going to be something that we're going to follow along. Okay.
So now when you're
Ventilation,
setting, when you're setting
0 is low, 1 is high.
okay, when
Then
you're setting
we're
the
going,
pH,
yeah,
is that just like a target pH?
exactly,
And it's going to note it on the screen and it's going to read it relative to what you're trying to get to?
exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So ventilation, low and high, aroma, length, and aroma period. So let's say, for example, stage 1, you want liquid smoke. All right. On the period aroma, or okay, let's go length. We're going to say, okay, we want it to work for 30 minutes. And we're going to activate this every 2 hours. Okay.
Okay.
So every 2 hours within the 24-hour time period,
So it's going to go twice.
it's going to work for 30 minutes.
30 minutes,
30
okay.
minutes every 2 hours.
Every
30
2 hours.
minutes of aroma. Okay.
Okay.
Now we're going to go under here. You're going to see that there's certain values that are already pre-programmed in. So when it comes to recovery, or that little pause icon that's at the end of the string of icons,
Yeah.
we want this thing to work for 30 minutes every 2 hours. So this one we're just going to leave alone.
Okay.
Now, recycle length and recycle period. These ones we would set either 1 or both to 0.
Okay.
Why? What does this mean? This means that the whole unit is going to work except for the fans. And the reason why this is going to happen is because maybe the way the fans have been running, or maybe they stopped running, we've got a hot zone and a cold zone. There's maybe a couple of different differentials of temperatures that have built up inside the cabinet for whatever reason. This was something that they envisioned to work for the time periods that you see on screen. Instead of minutes and hours, now it's minutes and seconds. Okay.
Yep.
To try and eliminate some sort of hot zone, cold zone. But for the most part, because the fan tends to run a lot in the system anyways, we can zero these out. There's no reason to stop cooling and heating, or cooling and humidifying, because, you know, we're just trying to recalibrate the air or the temperature inside the cabinet. Okay, so I want you to go down again. Okay, so here on the air renew and the length and period, this reverts to that first icon where you've got that fan, right? So for 5 minutes every 12 hours, so 2 times a day, it's going to come on and it's going to change that air inside the cabinet. And so this one we definitely want to leave alone. Okay. pH Governo. Okay, so this one is basically setting up an alarm for the pH for that particular stage, to say, okay, how close are we going to monitor this this 5.3, and are we going to set up an alarm for this one? So I would leave this one zeroed out or disabled for the moment. Okay.
Okay.
And then overtime, which would be our last one. Overtime will only come into effect if set, and it will be most useful if you're moving from a high temperature or a very low temperature from one stage and doing the opposite in the next stage, but maybe those stages are very short. Like, instead of setting it up for a 24-hour period, you only set it up for a 1-hour period. Okay. And you're like, okay, I want to take the temperature from up high. I want to bring it down really quick before moving on to another stage. And for whatever reason, maybe you're not getting down or you're worried about getting to those set points. So over time, if you were to set in, like, say, 1 more hour, would say, okay, in that first hour, we didn't really hit our set points for whatever reason. So I'm going to give it 1 more hour in the case if it didn't hit those set points to try and actually hit those set points. So it's something that unless you're setting up a very, very short stage is not something that you have to worry about programming. And believe me, when you start to create a recipe of 13 or 14 stages, if you can leave things zeroed out where you don't have to actually play with those icons, you'll be thanking me, trust me.
Yep. Okay.
And
Sounds
so
good.
basically you would now repeat this for, 8 stages, 9 stages. So I want you to just keep going ahead. Just keep pressing ahead, keep pressing it. Perfect. So now we got to where we want to program it in. Exactly. So here you would press that little folder icon. Now you've saved it in there. So you go customer, automatic recipe, my recipes, boom, and there's your recipes. Okay.
Yep.
Now, one other thing I want to tell you is you can copy and paste recipes, but you can't do it from a default side to a my recipes. But once you've created your first recipe, and let's say, for example, that you have another recipe that's maybe a larger caliber, so you want to start playing with certain parts of the recipe, you could go into your VT test, rename it something else, okay, exactly, and you could say VT test 2 or VT test, exactly. And then you say, okay, I want to go to stage number 3. No, you could just go ahead with the, there you go. So you can go stage number 3 and say, you know what, instead of 10 hours, I want it at 15 hours, okay? And maybe that's the only thing you want to change. Okay, go ahead, keep going ahead. Put it in spot number 3, boom. Now you've created your next recipe, instead of having to go all 8 stages, boom, 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 one at a time, all that kind of thing. So you can kind of shorten down the time that it takes to actually create another recipe, okay?
Yep.
So even though recipes cannot necessarily be deleted, they can be written over.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So what you have to remember when modifying a recipe or saving over a recipe is you have to make sure that the recipe that you either want to save over or are modifying is not currently in use.
Okay.
Okay. If it is, you would go and do all this work and make all these modifications, go to try and save it, and then it'll say, nope, it's currently in use, sorry. And then you're like, oh, I gotta exit this, I gotta choose another recipe, and then I have to start this process all over again. Okay, so just keep that in mind. If there's something that you don't like about that recipe, you need to modify a stage, a couple of stages, whatever it is, just make sure it's not in use currently, okay?
Okay.
So I want you to I want you to hit that start button. Okay. So see how it says ongoing recipe. Are you sure do you want to start a recipe? Because at all times, there is a recipe that's currently in use, and that is your test recipe.
Yeah.
And it's no, even if you exit out of the recipe, you haven't used it in the cabinet in 5 days, 10 days, a month, whatever it is, the computer is saying we always have a recipe here. Okay.
Okay.
So it's usually always going to come up with something like this. So you can, start it, not start it, whatever. I mean, it's up to you at this point. Okay.
Okay.
And so there you go. So you can try backing out. Okay, perfect. So we've gone now, if you want to go into your default recipes. So again, all of these ones all have some kind of crazy name that you might know, you might not know, but they will all relate to what is found in that book. Okay.
Yeah,
And so I don't
yeah.
know if you've gotten a chance to look through that book at all.
Not really.
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
So you're going to go in there and it's going to go through, a brief process on, why we do this, why we do that, in terms of salami production. But you're going to get to a point where you'll have a little picture. There you go. You've already got it printed out. There you go. You've got a little picture and you've got a caliber size. So when you want to follow along and select a recipe, just basically go through and say, okay, this is more or less the size that I'm working with. So I'm going to use that particular recipe to make my whatever, VT test product 3, 2, whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I'm assuming that these are diameters in millimeters.
Exact. Actually in centimeters.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. That makes more sense.
Absolutely. So from there, you're going to have a whole bunch of force meat. You're going to have whole muscle later on in like the second half of the document.
Oh, okay.
And so all the products are basically set up with its with their own little climatic recipe, including the salting. So here's one thing that I want you to do right now. I want you to pick one of those whole muscle recipes. So just keep scrolling down till you get to whatever it is. There you go. And now I want you to hit start. Yes, confirm it. Boom. So now you've got Bresaola running and you've got salting. Okay. So you've got your total time. So now you remember on the test recipe where we went to test concluso and you didn't see those little, you saw those little lines going through there. Okay.
Yep.
So why did we see those lines and why is it different here? So when you were creating your test recipe, one of the first boxes was the time box, and you had changed from 10 hours to 24 hours. So here, for example, we've got 288 total hours, okay?
Okay.
Now, we're always trying to count down this time unless we're not trying to count down time. And what the hell does that mean? Well, that means, let's say, for example, we get to the end of the recipe, okay?
Yeah.
Now you're going to look here at the total time of the Bresaola and be like, holy man, 2,079 hours. Like, does it really take that long to make Bresaola? No, it doesn't. But what happens is on the last stages, the company on each of these recipes will add additional time for personal preference.
Okay. For drying level and
Exactly. How dry do you want this Bresaola to be?
Okay.
Do you want it to be a semi-firm? Do you want it to be firm? So do I leave it in longer? Do I take it out before? So that's always up to discretion. Now, sometimes we will set it up like that test recipe where we don't, if we set up the recipe to run, maybe we start it on a Saturday at the factory level and they take off for Sunday. So nobody's going to come in there till Monday. But you know what? We want the unit to run anyways. So that's why they set it up where in the time box, they will write in 999. So if you were to go in right now and press the total time, and you press 999, and you press OK, now we're telling the computer we want the salting phase to run forever, or until I decide I don't want to run it anymore.
Okay.
Okay. Now, there's one more thing that I want to show you, which is, let's say, for example, you making your Bresaola, but you don't want to use the Stagionello for your salting. You set up your Bresaola in salting bins or however you're going to salt them, and you put them in another, like a regular refrigerator, and you've got them ready to go. Okay. So you need to skip this stage. In the time box, total time, you're going to press it, press 0. Okay. Now we skipped it completely. So now you're ready to go in there. You've hung your Bresaola. I want to start drying. Perfect. We skipped 288 hours of drying of salting time, and now we're going straight to what you needed to do. So 0 to skip any stage you need to get to where you want to go, and 999 to not count time anymore.
Okay.
And that's it. Now you know everything about the controller.
Okay.
All condensed into one.
Yeah.
1 hour and 18 minutes.
Yep. So let's say I wanted to go back and like look at this recipe, right? So I would go here.
Technician.
That's right. Okay. And this was
111. Okay.
Okay.
Technician again. Default recipe.
Let me find it.
Yep.
And then I could just go through.
Yep.
Okay, so I could go through here and tell how many times. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Okay.
Okay, so now I want you to hit the little start button. That takes you right back into your screen. Now, right now, you're back onto your screen. But remember, what's happening? Nothing, right? Nothing is flashing. So that means your product is still static. And the machine is not going to try and cool. It's not going to try and heat or whatever, because we haven't physically started it. So you want to make sure that when you exit the recipe and you get back in, that you start it again. Perfect. Now, we know what the home icon does. We know what the light icon is going to do. CIP, what the hell is this and how does it work? Okay, well, let's say, for example, we just finished a batch of whatever product. We finished the Bresaola, we've taken it out, we've packaged it, it's ready to go. You want to do a cleaning on the system. How you would do this, because there's no way that they set up, detergents and so on and so forth to automatically be sprayed into the system. So what you would do is you would empty out all the removable parts, all the hanging rods, all the guides. You take those out, you'd wash those separately. You would take some sort of sanitizer for stainless steel, and you would spray it everywhere except for that humidity sensor that's on the wall on the side. Okay?
Yep.
Spray everything except that. The door, the top, the bottom, the sides, everywhere. You can get anywhere you want inside this cabinet with your spray, as long as you don't hit that box. Once you do that, you will press the CIP icon, and that will start a 2-stage recipe. Okay, you can go ahead and press it. You can go ahead and press it. So now you can see for 1 hour, we want to get to 30 degrees Celsius, and we are ignoring the humidity because for an hour, we're going to start pumping in steam. Okay, we're going to get it all nice and hot, and we're going to get it wet. So all that sanitizer that you sprayed in there is going to start to drip, you know, and go down the walls and find itself wherever it's going to find itself to try and cover all of the surface areas, and maybe pool at the bottom of the machine, whatever the case may be. Okay.
Okay.
Then I want you to go into the time box and hit 0. Now we're trying to go into drying. So we're going to take the temperature down, and we're going to take the humidity down, so we can try and use cooling and the low humidity to try and dry all of our surface areas. And whatever is left over at the end of the hour, you just go in there and kind of wipe it up with a rag. Okay.
Yep.
And that's it. So now I want you to actually try one more thing. Okay, I want you to press and hold the start button, because I want to see what it does. So it sounded like it made a beep.
It beeped twice, and now it's gray.
Okay, now I want you to see if you can turn off that CIP. Okay, stop cleaning, confirm. Okay, now I want you to do it again. I want you to press and hold that start button. I want to see what this thing does. No beeps, huh?
Yeah, there's some beeping going on.
Okay, press the escape button there, because this was something that I had asked them about a couple of years ago to try and implement. Okay, so now what I want you to do, because there was some beeping, I want you to go to the home screen. Or sorry, I want you to pause the recipe and then go to the home screen. Go to customer, go into the climatic recipes, default recipe, and start. Okay, ongoing. Okay. Now I want you to do this one more time. I want you to press and hold that start button. Is there any beeping on this one? Okay, no. Okay.
No, just this.
Escape that. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to press, just press it once, the start button. Now I want you to press and hold it, and let's see what happens.
Just
No,
beeped
still
a few
nothing.
times and then put this box up. Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I'm gonna call him. Ooh, now it's red. Well, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to press the home button. Okay, I want you to press customer again. I want you to press climatic recipes, go my recipe. Go ahead, start anything, any one of these. Okay, okay, this is good. This is good. Beautiful. Okay. So Patrick, if you're listening to this one, this is a new function. This is something that I had asked for them 2 years ago. This is a wonderful little thing that they finally implemented. And why is this wonderful? Because remember when I was telling you before that the computer is always recognizing that there is a recipe running. Well, this is the first time since this system's inception where you can actually cancel a recipe. Before, you could only start or restart or start on top of a recipe. Whereas now with that function that you just did, you're actually able to stop this. Why is this important? Why am I so excited about this? It's because, let's say, for example, you finished your Bresaola or your slow fermentation salami, okay? You're done this recipe and you leave this alone, or let's say you stop it and you exit and it's just on the home screen where it's customer, technician, producer, okay? Previous to this firmware version, what would happen is it is still functioning, just not activating certain functionality like the fan or the heating or the cooling. But because this computer still has this thing running, it's still reading the temperature. And let's say, for example, the last stage that you were in of your recipe was calling for 10 degrees Celsius. And you're not using this cabinet for another 5 days. There's no way that internal temperature is going to stay at 10 degrees, right? It's going to probably climb up to maybe 20 degrees.
Yep.
You're going to end up triggering an alarm. So you're going to come here and be like, why the hell is this thing alarming? I'm not even using the system. So by canceling a recipe, this will allow the system to stop recognizing that there is a recipe, and it won't give you a false alarm. So I wanted to test this because it's not written in the manual, which is no surprise to me. But I was talking to one of the technicians and they informed me that they finally made this change. So I wanted to test it here with you.
Okay.
So that's it.
So I do that by, how did
I
do
think
that?
what you have to do is stop that recipe. Now I want you to press and hold it. Okay. Now press it again. Okay, there you go. So now you can you've actually stopped or canceled a recipe from being in progress,
Okay.
which is a beautiful thing. Okay,
Yes.
very good. Do you have any questions?
I'm sure I will. But this was an awesome training. I really do appreciate it, and you were very thorough. So thank you so much.
Brian,
Yes.
this is Patrick.
Hey, Patrick.
Nice to meet you. Let's see, I'll put a video on. Here we go.
there
Hey,
Hello.
Patrick.
I saw that you were recording this for training.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing that with us?
Not at all. I can share that with you.
That'd be great.
Yeah, because you know, my job here is the pilot plant manager, so I manage all the equipment and all that kind of stuff. But I'm also a leader in our fermentation option, right? So I'm going to be teaching I teach a brewing class and some other fermentation labs, and this is going to be one of our fermented food labs pieces of equipment here. But periodically, we will roll through other graduate students every 2 years, and I need to train them on it. And so,
Sure.
for me, this was an easy one, right? So, but
Well,
yeah,
look, I mean, to be honest with you, the control system is fairly easy to use. It's not, you know, once you, especially for yourself, where you may not need to look at the HACCP performance all that often, you know, it'll just be something that you're going from selecting the recipe or dialing in your recipes and then implementing. You know what I mean? You'll mostly be working with that recipe screen, as I stated in the beginning, and you really won't be navigating away from it very often. So, you know, as long as you know what icons are doing what, and you're looking at it and saying, okay, all right, something's out of whack. What is it doing? Okay, it's trying to humidify or it's trying to dehumidify, blah, blah, blah. You can kind of see what's normal, what's not normal.
yeah, I think most of my future questions are going to be more about process and production questions on, like, okay, you know, so, you know, let's say we're going to do most of our processing. We have a nice big walk-in refrigerator here, right? So we're going to do most of our our grinding and mixing inside the refrigerator and stuffing, and then we'll bring it out here. Do I need that conditioning step, right, to bring it from that refrigeration stage
Exactly.
up before I throw it into the fermentation stage, right? So, and those are the kind of questions I think I'm going to have in the future. You know, I think I got the humidification system working this morning. I know we got the flavoring one working the other day, and I know our refrigeration technician guy is looking for the gas. And then once we get that figured out, then I feel fairly good technical wise. It's more of the I don't have experience time. I mean, I can read a book, but reading a book does not equal any experience. I'll take anybody that's actually done it over somebody that's just read a book any day. So
Yeah, and I mean, as you go through it, what's important to do, especially for yourself, is go in there, smell, and touch. Okay, day by day. That's really what you want to do, because as you gain that experience, you know, there'll be less opening of the door and allowing it to do whatever it has to do to get to a final product. But until then, you know, you have to really have that, you know, tactile sensation to understand, is this going well? And what is going well smell like and feel like?
yeah, I mean, and I totally get the case hardening thing, right? I mean, I've dealt with that. I used to work for a big drying company in Northern California. We did a lot of tomatoes and peaches and apricots and stuff like that. And we even have that with you know, kilning a barley after it's been malted, right? So the whole air exchange and pausing thing makes sense to me. I will have to learn how to adapt it to a meat product. So there's going to be a big learning curve.
Well, look, I posted it online this morning, and I'll never stop saying it. Curing meat is probably the biggest challenge any producer will ever try to do.
Yeah. So
So if
do you
you
have
can master this, you can master anything.
yeah, I don't know. Do you have a blog or something that you have, or what do you got?
Well, I on our